Hi, my name's Carl Herzog. I'm the Public Historian for the USS Constitution Museum. You know, among the myriad lessons that the stories of old Ironsides teach us and that we explore here at the USS Constitution Museum are lessons in leadership. Leadership doesn't always look like you expect it to look like, and the history of Constitution is filled with both examples of daring, brave leadership at every level, from lower level sailors and Marines up through the captains and commodores of the squadrons. Leadership is something the Navy is always concerned about, and one of Constitution's roles and responsibilities today is still instilling lessons in leadership in sailors coming up through the ranks in the U.S. Navy. Each year at USS Constitution, on board the ship itself, the Navy's newly inaugurated Chief Petty Officers spend 2 weeks in a Heritage Week of training and leadership lessons derived from being on board USS Constitution and thinking about the role that they're going to take on in the service. There would seem to be obvious reasons why both the Navy and, frankly, any large ship at sea would be interested in the role of leadership. Commanding a large ship and its crew is a significant responsibility and demands coordination and skill unseen in a lot of other arenas. But the lessons that happen at sea are transferable to other arenas. And many Navy officers have ended up writing books that translate out to both the business world and the general public sector on how to be leaders, leaders in a community, leaders in business, and leaders on ships. Many naval captains and officers continue to contribute to the development of understanding the nature of leadership and leadership styles within the Navy and in the rest of the maritime community. The International Maritime Organization actually now requires all international shipping and commercial mariners and ship captains to have taken classes looking at leadership, teamwork, leadership, and managerial skills. These classes emphasize the idea that there are different types of leadership styles, that not all leaders operate exactly the same way. But they also emphasize the idea of that a leader will understand the resources that are available to them. The stereotype tradition of the dictatorial captain whose rule is law has kind of gone by the wayside. Today's captains and today's leaders understand that making the most of their crew on a bridge, for example, of a ship, is the best way to ensure success. Certainly, this is borne out in the stories in old Ironsides history. Some of the great leaders in Constitution's history gained fame not for necessarily any of their own brash daring do, but for what they instilled and contributed to the people under them. Take, for instance, this gentleman, Edward Preble. Preble is Commodore of the squadron commanding from onboard Constitution during the Barbary War, and after USS Philadelphia had been seized by the Tripolitans and was being held in the harbor, it was up to Preble to come up with a way to destroy the ship to prevent it from becoming used by the enemy. Preble himself wasn't the one who was going to lead a daring raid into the harbor, but he helped orchestrate exactly such a daring raid by instilling in his young officers a sense of trust and faith that they could execute a particularly hazardous mission. He turned to a group of young lieutenants that he had originally complained to the Navy were nothing but boys, a moniker that later led to them becoming known as Preble's Boys. They included the likes of Stephen Decatur and Charles Stewart, who would later go on to command Constitution. With these young officers under his control, Preble arranged and set up a plan in which a captured merchant ship would appear to be a local vessel, allowing it to sneak into the harbor, come alongside Philadelphia with the help of another vessel that was under their command, and board Philadelphia, defeat the occupying force and set fire to the ship, destroying it before it could be freed from running aground in the harbor and used against them. It was an incredibly hazardous and incredibly difficult proposition, but it worked. And it was the result, in part, of Preble's willingness to put some faith in the young, inexperienced, but certainly capable officers that were under his command. Again, one of those young officers was Charles Stewart, seen here. Stewart later went on to take command of USS Constitution toward the end of the War of 1812, and in 1815 encountered 2 British frigates at once and engaged them both in battle at the same time. Although both ships were slightly smaller than Constitution itself, the idea of taking on a 2-against-1 battle, even against those odds, was still difficult because of the opportunities for enemy ships to swarm around a single enemy, engulfing it and directing fire from both sides, almost kind of like a swarm of bees that you can't quite completely hit all of them to destroy them. Constitution came up alongside HMS Cyane and HMS Levant, which were in a line along broadsides, and after an extended period of dramatic broadside firing, when smoke covered the entire deck of the ship, Stewart had the foresight to pause, not to just keep firing and run headlong into battle, but to stop firing long enough to gain a sense of his situational awareness, to understand what was happening, rather than just being carried along by events. When he did so, and the smoke slightly cleared, or more accurately, he sailed out of that cloud of smoke, he saw that the other enemy ships were exactly doing that, about to try and surround him. So immediately, he called upon his crew to execute a maneuver that would actually put the ship into reverse, to back the sails on its mainmast. As they did so, Constitution first came to a stop and then slowly began sailing backwards, back into the cloud of smoke that it had just left. This had 2 effects. One, it prevented one of the British ships from crossing underneath Constitution's stern and raking Constitution. Instead, Stewart was able to bring the ship into broadsides against that one British ship, while the other British ship continued to sail on forward out of range. With this maneuver, Stewart was able to swiftly overcome one ship, secure it, send aboard a boarding party to take control of that ship, and then immediately turn around and have Constitution chase down and defeat the other ship as well, too. Within a matter of hours, he had taken both ships as prizes. That swift maneuver demonstrated a couple elements of leadership that were key to Stewart. One was simply that he trusted that his crew could execute this unexpected maneuver and this unorthodox maneuver rapidly in the midst of battle. But also Stewart showed a sense of understanding the need to have situational awareness, to know what was going on around him. And in order to do that, he was willing to take the risk to momentarily stop firing in the middle of battle, to let the smoke clear and see what exactly was happening, rather than just continuing to rush forward pell-mell. That decision helped him secure this last great victory of the War of 1812 for USS Constitution. These are just a couple of examples of great leadership that come out of the history of USS Constitution, but you can see and read more on the USS Constitution Museum's website. On our website, you can also see the leadership that's being offered up by today's active duty crew in our Meet Today's Crew virtual exhibit, which provides interviews with the sailors and officers working on board USS Constitution today. If you have any questions or comments about this, don't hesitate to let us know on social media. And as always, if there's other topics you'd like to see videos about, be sure to let us know there as well, too. Thanks a lot.